What's up, everybody? It is your boy Yashiroku, and I got another video for you guys today. Things you need to know before you buy a Vader or a 125cc clone or Chinese bike in general. Like when I got my 125cc bike, I didn't really have very high expectations. I knew that, Chinese things don't really last or have the same quality as things that are name brand or things of that nature. The Hondas, Kawasaki, even Harley, I guess. All brand motorcycles to me have their ups and downs. Currently I have a KTM. A lot of people say a lot of things about that, but from my personal experience, I've enjoyed the bike. And of course, I've got, pros and cons to even the KTM, which is a name brand bike. There are 5 things specifically about the Vader that you might need to know before you think about buying. From my personal experience, I'm a mechanical type person. So if something breaks, or if something I want to figure out or whatever, I dedicate a lot of time to try to fix or get the problem solved. It was a lot of that. Well, right now it's kind of like if you were to get in the market, there's a lot of avenues that you can go to and a lot more support than when I first got my bike. It was pretty much nothing for the most part. So. And I also help people too. I'm not gonna, say like, oh, you're on your own, that's going to be one of the 5. But yeah, there's a lot more. There's a lot more support now than there was back then. Like there's no dealer, but now there is a lot of dealers because Benelli I've seen in shops and a few other bikes. That are 125cc bikes are now surfacing on showroom floors. Usually when I bought it, it was online only. There was no place where you could go try it out or whatnot. But even the local dealer that I have bought Benelli, the thing about Benelli is now Chinese owned. A lot of people believe that Benelli is still the Italian brand, but it's actually now, China. I forgot what the company owns it, but it is a Chinese. It's pretty much in the same backyard as most of the clones are. But yeah, that's in showrooms now, like legitimate, not even like scooter shops. Because in New York, there's a lot of like scooter shops and such. But they're actually in like Honda dealers and Kawasaki dealers. The dealer that I was dealing with, KTM dealer, has a few Benellis and a few other. What's the other Chinese bike I saw? Which was I was kind of shocked by that because I was going to get this bike. I forgot what it was. It was a dual sport. Oh, SSR. I think SSR is Chinese too because SSR. It's the same. They make a Rascal, but this was a dual sport bike that I was going to get. But now that they're a SSR dealer now, but I guess in that regard, like there's support because the dealer deals with them. But any of the Vaders and the bikes like that, you're not going to have much support. But now it's a lot better because I can share knowledge too. That I know, and there's other places like Venom. They actually did like motor teardowns at Venom, so they will be a little bit. I don't endorse them or anything, but I've seen some of their stuff, and there's a few other YouTubers too. But like main manufacturers or quote unquote dealers, you could go to them. But other than that, you're pretty much on your own with trying to fix or diagnose stuff. But there's a big community now than when I started. Because when I started, I was truly on my own. So that's since changed. That really shouldn't really, push you away because of that. But there might be some instances where you might be on your own. But like I said, it's a bigger community now. That was one. So now I got 4 other ones. And the other one is I want to talk about is specifically with the Vader. I don't know about the other ones, like the Hellcat, SSR editions, Ice Bear editions. The number one issue with the Vader, and it's something that you can't fix. Well, you can fix it, and that would be like the electrical problems. Through the span of me having the bike, I've probably bought like 5 batteries, or 6 maybe. The reason being is these motors don't really put out enough voltage to properly charge a battery, because the battery that it has right now that they use is a very, very tiny battery. I guess to fit in the bike, it's a very small battery, and it's not so much that the battery doesn't charge enough. What happens is, like with these bikes, these are pit bike motors, so the stator doesn't really put out much power to power the bike plus to recharge the battery. So what happens is, if you run a lot of electronics on the bike, it's not going to be enough to really recharge the battery. So you'll just be running on a battery, especially if you're out at idle or just have the bike on or whatnot. It's just going to be running off the battery power. And I believe that it only charges, the bike only charges at around 4,000-ish RPM. About that, I believe. That's when it starts to actually charge. So it's not like a car or other bikes, like for instance my Duke, where it just charges while the bike is on. These pit bike motors don't really begin to really charge until you get about like in the mid-range ish. So when you're like at idle, you're pretty much just running off the battery for your electricals. So what happens is, when you run the when you run the bike for idling, and have just turned the key on and all of that, you're using a battery, and then when the battery actually wants to recharge, or needs to recharge, is only when you're actually riding. And again, which brings me back to before, that the stators don't really put out that much power. So doing that a few times, especially if you don't recharge the battery, when you're not riding, because when I wasn't riding, it stayed on the tender. That's how I got to be able to preserve my battery, was doing that. But eventually, keep doing that. You're going to eventually need another battery. When you start having starting problems, that's when you'll know. Or when you start it, it'll click and then reset. That's pretty much the indicator that this battery is on its way out, but not really on its way out unless you charge it. And eventually, you doing that a couple times, you're going to end up having to get another battery. The only solution that I've came up with to kind of counteract this is to run no electronics at all. I mean, unless you're just going to run the headlight. Because the headlight itself, I converted mine to a lower bulb, because I think it was an S2 bulb that it uses. I converted it to a H4, and I was using like one of those fog light bulbs, which only put out about maybe like 15 watts. And it was just enough for me to ride and be seen, but you can't really see anything. I didn't really do a lot of night riding, but if I did get, like for instance, like now it gets dark at like 4 or 5 or something like that. It'll be enough just to see, but you really can't see, especially if you're down one of those lights. Down one of those roads where the lights are very dim or no lights at all. So I have a few videos like that too. You can actually see like the light. But what I did was, like, my main running light was very low, and then when I did have to switch on to the main light just to see, which was a higher voltage. I believe the running light I had, because I changed my headlight fairing, so I had like a little inside one of those map light like 4-watt bulbs for just a running light to be seen, and then for headlight I had like a 15-watt fog light to be seen even more at night, but you couldn't see. You just see just a little bit. You probably could run an LED too, as long as it's like low voltage, but you probably could use one of those real bright fog lights, because they do sell those, but I just use the regular Cree, it's called a Cree light. and it got me through the most part at night. Like I said, you can be seen, but you just can't see, or you see barely. So that's the only thing that you can really do, because the headlight, when you get the bike, the headlight is like, I think, a 55 watt. That's pretty much where all your juice and stuff is going to. Plus the cluster uses power, and the rear tail light, and the turn signals not so much, because the turn signals are LED. So at least for the Gen 1 Vaders, I don't know about the newer gens, but those were LEDs, and those in a way were kind of crap too, because those were smoked LEDs. So you know, it's kind of hit or miss. It depends on your preference. But in low light situations, you barely could see it. But that's what it came with, which is crazy that was DOT approved, but that's another thing. Yeah, you would have to rip all the electronics off, or just keep it on tender until you got to buy another battery. Next thing, this is the number one thing that usually goes unnoticed until you actually notice it. The engine mount bolt are crap. At least the main bolt holds, but the rear bolt, especially if you stunt, you will know this sooner, like doing wheelies or hopping in the bike or anything, any kind of stuntage, and even just basic, you know, Rossi stuff. But for me, I noticed, because I run on the crappiest roads in America, so I noticed that a lot sooner. The rear mount for the engine, that one breaks all the time. I did like 2 replacements, but my thing with that, the second one I did, which I think is because of the vibrations. So what I did was, I did like a custom little fab. What I did was, I got an A grade bolt, but what I did was put 2 like bushings. I made my own bushings for it. So I put 2 bushings on the end part, or both ends rather. I just threaded it through, put a bushing on one side, and put a bushing on the other side, my bushing, rubber bushing, and then I tightened it, and I had no issues from that anywhere. My thing is the fact that, because it's metal on metal, it's, the vibrations will shake it, loose. Literally, it will break it. So I just put 2 rubber, quote unquote, my little bushings on it, and I never had an issue with that again. That's just something that you have to do. Even if you just, like I said, if you just replace it with a grade A bolt, which I did the first time, it didn't work. But if you put those 2 little it was like a piece of rubber, like a thick piece of rubber. I just cut it, and then I just I bored it with a drill, and then I just nice little thick piece of something I would have laying around. It wasn't. I mean, you can probably get like some kind of like long rubber that's small enough or whatnot. And like I said, you just cut it. I cut it with a cut-off wheel, and then I just bored it with a drill, and that's pretty much what I used. Some people also have axle issues. I had an axle, but mine was bent like soon later, and I didn't even know until I took it off one day when I was doing the brakes. When I did the brake pads, I saw it, and I was like, oh well, my axle's bent. And I didn't even know. So I was like, oh damn, my axle's bent. So I had to buy another one. I replaced it with a Grom axle. It's fairly cheap. But like I said, if you do a lot of stunning or whatever, those things will break. So it's the rear mount and also the axle. And the number one thing with this bike is corrosion. So if you leave it outside, it is very susceptible to rust. My bike was inside most of the time, but I used to like ride in the rain, and also I took it out in the snow. We're not going to talk about that, but I took it out in the elements because I rode the bike all year round. Yeah, you're going to have a lot of surface rust, and also, like I said, contributing to like the bolt issue, that could contribute to it also, rusting and stuff. So that could have contributed to me breaking them. But that's just what the bike is. Also, stuff breaks. You want to go over your bolts with Loctite. I didn't really do that as much. but there was bolts that were loose that I always went over because I always took the bike apart anyway. So, well, you know, that's one thing too. Like stuff will break, that will contribute to stuff breaking because I took the fairings off like millions of times, and sometimes you do get careless. You know, you might put it somewhere or drop it, or you know, mess up a tab or this and that. And it is very, very easy to break the plastics on this bike. That's why a lot of people switch over to the Grom plastics, because they're a lot more durable and can withstand a lot more. But you know, and most of the guys that go towards the Grom fairings are people that broke theirs. So because it's very easy to break the tabs on these bikes. Metal and plastic do not mix. Let's just say that not rubber. Rubber and metal might mix, but plastic and metal do not mix at all. So I broke many tabs. It was to the point where I had to like zip tie it, and in some areas I like metal zip tied it and put like the security guard zip ties on just to hold like the fender. When I had the fender, oh, that was a nightmare. And I eventually had to tear that fender, the rear fender, off because it was just shaking like crazy because it wasn't secure to the frame. And that was because a lot of the tabs or whatever was broken. And that, and then taking off the fender on this bike, it kind of adds some rigidity to it. So taking it off, it does feel a lot lighter and sketchy at times, but it comes down to if you like the look or not. So I had to take that off, and like I said, you know, if you're doing top speed runs, that is not something that I want to be on, going maybe faster than 60, and that's as fast as I got the bike to go. It's like around like 60, 66, something like that. I still got the underbelly, but the underbelly cowl, or whatever you want to call it, that broke. Like some people, it breaks like once they get the bike. I couldn't use it anyway, because of the fact that I had changed exhaust, and I couldn't put it back how it was. So I didn't get a custom exhaust or Grom exhaust or nothing like that. That kind of contours going under. I got the pit bike one, so mine's kind of curved and went up, so the cowl wouldn't be secure if I had it. I probably could have made it fit. It wouldn't have had no ground clearance, but I mean, if I really wanted it on, I probably could have got it on, but nah. So I just left it. It sat in the corner for about a year. Then, like a few months after that, I looked over there in the corner. It was broke. So I was like, dang. I probably could fix it with some Bondo or something like that, and then repaint it, or maybe put fiberglass on it or something like that, or just glue it or something. I probably could have done that, but I was like, nah, I'm gonna just keep that as a souvenir, I guess. So that was all my 5 things before you think about getting a Chinese bike in general, not just 125cc. But the main thing is also, these bikes are good bikes. They're not bad. I mean, when you spend almost nothing for them, because I mean, you can even go on like Craigslist or MySpace Marketplace and get these bikes for like almost nothing. I mean, you can get them for maybe $800, $500. And a lot of the bikes that are like, you know, that low, it's usually people either don't take care of them, or they don't know, or they just don't start. I mean, that's the number one thing. You know, it's almost no money. Even if you get a brand new one, it's under $2,000. Like, I mean, you know, that's nothing. Especially tax season's coming up or whatnot. You know, you can also finance them too. But I mean, for me, I just paid straight up, because I mean, it wasn't that much money. I think I paid like, yeah, $1,500, but I paid about $2,000 through the whole ordeal of getting it street legal, a plate and all of that. So yeah, paying the taxes and all of that. So yeah, about $2,000 to get you out on the road and riding. I see a lot of them now. Like I always, while I'm driving in the car or riding my bike, like I see a lot of the Vaders now surfacing. A lot of the Rascals, but that's because, you know, SSR and also Benelli's. SSR and Benelli are, there's dealers now for them. So you see a lot of those now. But I did see like the electric in New York City. You see a lot of them. But yeah, I've seen a lot of the electric ones now. I've seen a few Vaders 125cc's, but they're fun bikes. I mean, like I said, I mean the cost of them to get you on the road is insane. So I mean, everybody should go out and get these bikes and have fun. So with that, Yashiroku out, and that's till the next video.